Hi everyone. We are going to do a very quick overview of the entire APA manual in this PowerPoint. So we are starting to learn about the 7th edition of the APA manual, and this manual is much more user-friendly than the previous manual, so it's good that we're starting out with a better product in the beginning. So let's get started. So when we're looking at what we seek to gain, we are really going to look at some of those most common errors. We're going to look at the resources that are available. We're going to talk about how to do our citations, and also really mastering the basics of APA, looking at how to use those references. So this is the manual that we're going to be going through, and I do want to highlight that even in the front cover of the manual, you can just open it up, there are nice tables that will give you some common APA style guidelines that are very helpful, just a quick resource for you, and I would suggest just leaving it open to the front cover. And there's also, just if you need additional information as far as common references, the very back cover on the inside has good references as well. So those may be your two go-to pages just for real general information, so just kind of keep that in mind. Within chapter 1 there's quite a bit of information, and we're looking at the basics as far as scholarly writing and looking at publishing principles. So we're talking about those types of articles, and this is really congruent with what we're learning, because we need to know what types of articles they are, because each and every type of article has different benefits and different uses as well. So this will be actually a really good supplement to what we're doing with our textbook as well. We're also going to go into, in chapter 1, ethical, legal, and professional standards, and again, this will tick and tie very well with what you're going to be doing in city training. It's something that's required in this course as well. So the APA manual may seem like just a reference, but it really has some good resources for you that will help to support what we're doing in this course. So it's really important to get that very solid baseline to build on, because you will be using these same principles throughout your master's program as you're looking in the literature and selecting literature and evidence-based practices to integrate into practice to elevate outcomes. And that's what it's all about, is elevating outcomes. So this is the foundational part of really working toward that evidence-based practice focus. So this is really very valuable. It may not be the most exciting information, but it is very valuable for you to be super effective in implementing those outcomes that really is going to make a difference with those that you serve. So keep that in mind. We're also going to talk about plagiarism and self-plagiarism, and there is just some really good information in chapter 1, so highlight those when you're reading and dive into self-plagiarism as well. And just think about the concept of duplicate submissions, and that you're self-plagiarizing if you're submitting the same work in one class as you do in another, if you're not requesting permission to do so and citing as such. So keep that in mind. This is really important, again, as you move forward, because with your education, we want to continue to build. We don't necessarily just want to replicate what you already know. There may be some opportunities where you want to build on the information that you already have, and that's what it's all about. It's not about just duplicating what's already been done. So I just wanted to highlight that point with you. And let's go ahead and move on. In chapter 2, it's going to go into the nuts and bolts as far as the manuscript parts, the title, the byline, and there's specific samples of student papers in chapter 2 that you will find to be very important and very helpful to you. So key into those parts, because that's, again, we're providing structure to our writing. So keep that in mind as well and really focus on those parts as you're reading. In chapter 3, some of the things you want to, again, look at, it really supplements chapter 1, actually, as far as the reporting standards and looking at quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods. Those are the key areas to focus on as you're doing your reading. So I'm just trying to key you into some of the most important information that you will be going through as you're reading the materials. So in chapter 4, this is really, again, another area where you may want to kind of refer back as far as writing style and grammar, making sure that the language is clear and concise and formal language. And we want to use words, for example, such as examine versus look at. So it's saying the same thing. However, we need to set that very professional tone when we're writing, and we need to use very clear and concise language. And the fewer words that make the greatest impact are usually more effective in your writing style. So again, keep in tune to the tone of your writing, and it's not how we normally speak. So we need to keep those types of things in mind. You want to avoid any kind of jargon, informal language, sayings. You want to avoid things that you don't know specifically what the subject may be, like words such as this, that, these, those, it. You may know what those words refer to, however, your reader may not, and it may cause confusion. So you really want to avoid using those words. Those words meaning this, that, these, those, it. Just avoid the listed words in your documents, and things are much clearer that way for the readers. Always use correct grammar, subject verb agreement. If the subject is singular, you want your verb to match that, and also avoid hanging or misplaced modifiers that don't really modify what you intend them to modify, that make things unclear for the reader. You also, within this particular section, there's tips to improve your writing. Really focus on that. It will help you. As we look at chapter number 5, we're looking at bias, and this is especially important because we want to be very objective in how we use our words in writing. So bias-free language, being very sensitive to labels, and it also lists out bias by topic such as age, race, those types of things. So really key into that because it's important as well as you're writing. In chapter 6, we're looking at mechanics of style, and this is the nitty-gritty as far as punctuation, spelling, all those really basic things that are so critical in professional writing. In chapter 7, we go into tables and figures, and we won't be using a lot of tables and figures in our course, but just know how they need to be formatted. In chapter 8, there are guidelines for citations, in-text citations. See page 266. Again, there's some really good examples there. You will find your favorite pages in these books and pages that you will refer back to quite often. It also goes into paraphrases and quotations in chapter 8. So again, these are the 3 highlighted areas I want you to really focus on when you're doing your reading. Of course, graze through everything else just so you know that what is available to you. When we look at chapter number 9, we're looking at that reference list, and we're looking at designating the author, the date, the title, the source, the different variations, and how to list references in order. And basically they are in alpha order by author. And then they go down to, if it's the same author, it would be by the date, and so on. So really look at the reference list order. That's very important in how you list your references, and also the structure, what the nuts and bolts actually are as far as the references. In Chapter 10, this will be a chapter that you will use quite often. So again, be very familiar with this. This chapter has reference examples, and there are so many different types of references that we can't know off of the top of our head how to cite each and every one. So there are examples here that will be very helpful to you. Pay special attention to pages 316 through 352. That's where most of the examples exist. And again, know where they are so you can find them. You don't need to memorize them. So within the APA manual, there are some common areas that you will be wanting to take a look at as you're doing your composition. So this is a list of some of those page numbers from our new manual that you will find to be very helpful, and you may want to refer to those very often. This is just a sample, and like I said, in the book itself there are lots and lots of samples of references, but this is just pulling off the top, I would say, 3 types of references that you will be using: books, websites, and journals. And there is some variation if there is a DOI, and I didn't include the DOI type references here, but just know that they are in your book, and they are a little bit different than what I have listed here, but these are just some basic samples so you can see the structure. And some of the most common mistakes that I see with students, so this is something to really key into: the capitalization in titles. Typically, capitalization is reserved to the first word of the title, and any proper nouns or any word in the title that follows a punctuation mark, such as a semicolon, colon, or a period. The first word following that punctuation is capitalized, and the remainder are lowercase letters for the words, unless there is a proper noun. So we want to use italics when we're having the title of a book, and we're using italics when we're using the name of a particular periodical journal. Also, designating authors sometimes is problematic, and especially with government websites, you want to go with the organization. Typically, that is the author, unless they have specific authors listed as those who compose that particular document for that website. So as far as in-text citation, again, there's references in the book, but this is just a depiction of the common ways to do in-text citations, both the first citation and the second citations. So this just gives you an idea. And then some more information about in-text citations, and the most common errors involve the et al. Citation. So when we have multiple authors, we use the et al. Format. So it's ET-AL period, and when they're in parentheses, the comma follows the period, and then the date is after that. Also, mistakes in citing groups or organizations identified by abbreviations. And you want to write out the name of the organization the first time in your paper, and then in parentheses the abbreviation for that organization. And after that, then you can just use the abbreviation. And there's some differences when you use parentheses or if you use just the author's name in the text of the document. So be key into those factors as well. So, just some general tips. Use past tense when you're referring to literature. Be clear and concise. Just kind of a recap of some of the things that we've already spoken about. And here are some resources. This is information on the APA manual. Purdue OWL is one of the best supplemental resources for you. Not all are correct, and I do want to emphasize that not all templates are correct either, so keep that in mind. And the Writing Center is available to you. So really, this is for your success. And always, always, always use your manual, and that's why it's so important